Hello, everyone! It's time to talk about what else I saw in January, and this was a weird month. Pretty much all the movies that I saw last month, I saw at the beginning of the month, and that feels like a really long time ago now, so it's a good thing I keep a list. We'll start at number one with a movie that's a leftover from the Christmas season. Sort of. You'll understand why I say sort of when I tell you about the movie. It's 1944's Christmas Holiday, which stars Deanna Durbin as a woman unhappily married to a surly gambler, played by Gene Kelly, who gets in trouble with the law. Any movie headlined by Deanna Durbin and Gene Kelly, you would naturally expect to be a fun musical with lots of smiles and fluff. But that's not the case here. I thoroughly enjoyed Deanna Durbin's effervescence in Lady on a Train when I saw it the first time last year, and hoped to see more of that here, but this is tonally the complete opposite of that movie. Durbin's character, who does get to sing two numbers, is so miserable, and Kelly plays a pretty nasty customer, which is so uncharacteristic. I give them credit for their atypical performances in this noirish crime drama, especially Durbin, who I think could have made a successful transition into drama if she hadn't retired from acting. But if you go into this expecting the holiday cheer implied by the title, you're gonna get a pretty dreary surprise. Right after I watched that, I watched 1940's A Window in London, also known as Lady in Distress, which was recommended to me last year by 180 Juggalo, who knows that I have a soft spot for early Michael Redgrave performances. The initial plot of this one actually sounds a bit like Lady on a Train, but the way it unfolds is totally different. Michael Redgrave's character is riding the train to work when outside his window he sees what looks like a murder being committed in a passing building. He goes to help, finds it was all a misunderstanding, and gets embroiled in a complicated situation involving a magician, played by Paul Lucas, and his wife. I would call this one thriller light. For one thing, it's very short, barely an hour long, but content-wise, it never gets too dark or heavy. Is it a drama? Is it a comedy? It's tough to say. Even when things get serious, they're never too tense, and the plot seems to change direction a lot, something which does help keep things from getting too predictable. Movie number 3 was the Netflix release that everybody was talking about at the beginning of the year, Bird Box, the apocalyptic movie starring Sandra Bullock about the monster that, if you look at it, will make you want to kill yourself. I thought it was alright. I actually read the book a year or two ago, and honestly, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was unoriginal, implausible, and bland, but I suspected at the time that I might like it better as a film, and I think that turned out to be true, though it's still not a perfect story, and still not very original, but at the same time, it does have some tense scenes and some good acting moments for Bullock. As usual, when there's a movie that half the world seems to become obsessed with overnight, and then the other half of the world becomes obsessed with hating just a week later, I'm gonna take a lukewarm position in the middle. It wasn't a great movie, but it wasn't a horrible piece of garbage either. It kept me sufficiently entertained for a couple hours, even if it doesn't hold up too well to close inspection. Also, I don't like watching people intentionally hurt themselves. I hated it in The Happening, and I didn't like it here either. Movie number 4 is the only World War II movie on the list this month, 1968's Counterpoint, which is about a battle of wills between a famous egotistical conductor, played by Charlton Heston, and the Nazi general, played by Maximilian Schell, who detains him and his orchestra and demands they perform for him. This one has its weak points. The script especially has some questionable lines that made me scratch my head, either because they're just oddly written or because the actors fail to sell them. But the movie's tense moments are very good and further accentuated by the incorporation of some great classical music. It's also got a nice, cold, calculating performance from Anton Diffring, who's always great in these roles, and one of Leslie Nielsen's straight parts before he transitioned to comedy. One little moment I appreciated was when Heston's conductor tries to take charge with a gun, but because this isn't Heston's usual type of role, he doesn't know how to use it, so Nielsen is like, "Give me that thing, you don't know what you're doing," and when Heston protests, he's like, "Well, at least put the safety on. It's right here," for crying out loud. Movie number 5 is 2018's 90s action movie-esque thriller with Dwayne Johnson, Skyscraper. Now, I have explained recently, I believe, that though I'm not a huge fan of Dwayne Johnson, though I don't hate him, he has been making some movies in the past couple years that do strike me as harmlessly entertaining. And this wasn't awful. The common denominator when I review these movies seems to be I was able to enjoy it well enough as long as I didn't think about it too much. But I do have to agree with the critics about some things. The movie has its shortcomings. My biggest complaint was the parade of cartoonish antagonists, some of whom had questionable acting talent, something I also didn't like about Rampage. And yes, the resemblance to 1974's The Towering Inferno is unmistakable, and in a contest between the two, Towering Inferno comes out on top for me. The effects are better, the characters more memorable, the plotline's more complex, and if that doesn't get you in the door, it's got Steve McQueen and Paul Newman teaming up. So, yeah, I'd rather have watched that again. Movie number 6 is the popular and beloved 2001 Hayao Miyazaki animated favorite, Spirited Away. This one was recommended by Dennis and Rick Zantua and, I don't know, about a million other people on the internet. Spirited Away is the coming-of-age story of a young, timid girl traveling to a new home with her parents who accidentally gets trapped inside a spirit world. It's a fanciful, complex story well-matched with fanciful, complex visuals. Miyazaki's elegant animation style defies convention and isn't afraid to get a little weird sometimes. In all honesty, I probably wouldn't like this movie if I saw it as a child. Some of the images are just so freaky. The unrestrained imagination in the storytelling packs the movie with so much content that the plot is never predictable, and not one of the many personalities you encounter is all that they seem at first. I do feel compelled to say, and I almost don't want to say this given how popular and how well-loved these movies are, that having seen 2 of Miyazaki's films, I do feel that even though the majority of my generation seems to be obsessed with these movies, I don't think that's really going to be the case with me. I appreciate them, I appreciate the artistry, the creativity, the music, all of that, but it's not exactly the kind of thing that I get super enthusiastic about, so don't expect that from me. It's just not really my kind of thing. That doesn't change the fact, however, that I think this is a fantastically made film with an engaging protagonist, a bittersweet story, and a complexity of characterization you don't often find in your average animated movie. Movie number 7 is 1947's Repeat Performance, in which Joan Leslie plays a famous stage actress who kills her husband on New Year's Eve. Wrought with shock and guilt, she desperately wishes she could go back a year to a time before all their trouble began. Mysteriously, she gets her wish, but no matter how hard she tries to prevent the same things from happening, she struggles to change the outcome. Louis Hayward co-stars, who I usually think of as a friendly, likable guy, but boy was he a jerk in this. It was even harder to stomach him because you had classy Tom Conway and a sweet Richard Basehart in the supporting cast, 2 characters I would have been more than happy for her to go off with. I should point out that going into this, I thought this would be a murder mystery thriller, and that's not quite what it was. The murder happens at the very beginning, and then it turns into more of a relationship drama, which wasn't what I'd anticipated. But when you stick around through Leslie's journey of ups and downs, or mostly downs, as she tries in vain to change the course of history, the climactic sequence is tense and ultimately pretty satisfying. Okay, those are all the movies I saw last month. It's only 7, probably because in the last 2 weeks I've been watching a couple TV series instead. One was Enemy at the Door, a 2-season British series from 1978 my parents and I found on Amazon Prime about the German occupation of the Channel Islands, specifically Guernsey, during World War II. This is a bit of war history that some people might be more familiar with now, thanks to the book and film, The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, both of which I've reviewed. This series focuses more on the rocky relations between the Islanders and the Germans, as the Islanders struggle to contend with their restricted freedoms and deprivations, while the Germans try to make their occupation a shining example to the world of peaceful cohabitation. You might notice I keep saying German instead of Nazi. That's because it doesn't feel exactly right to refer to all of the Germans as Nazis, because of the four main German officers that the series focuses on, only one is a dedicated member of the Nazi Party. This is actually a source of contention between these characters, as the SS officer tends to question everyone's loyalties to the Führer and goes over the commandant's head to report directly to Berlin. Meanwhile, on the island side of things, the story focuses on a doctor who's sort of coerced into serving as an intermediary between the Germans and the Islanders, which causes all sorts of personal and professional consternation. This is a British TV show from the 70s, so it does have that old stagey look that most British shows from the 70s have, and that does take some getting used to, and most of the Germans do sound like Englishmen, because they are Englishmen, but once you get used to all that, it is an engrossing show. It has a variety of engaging storylines that don't shy away from difficult topics. There are characters who are fun to hate and others who you unexpectedly come to appreciate. I especially enjoy the dynamics between the doctor and his wife and the doctor and the commandant. My biggest disappointment was that it ended pretty abruptly and only covered about half the war, and I'd been hoping it would cover the full extent of the occupation. So I wish there was more, but that doesn't alter how I felt about the rest of it. Should you check it out, be prepared for some lengthy scenes with lots of intense discussion, frequently boiling into argument. That's where the real meat of the show lies. The other show I watched with my mom was the first season of The Invaders from 1967. This science fiction show follows David Vincent, played by Roy Thinnes, an architect who sees a UFO landing and uncovers an alien plot to invade the Earth. He then dedicates himself to hunting down evidence of their plans and doing whatever he can to stop the invasion, something that proves extra difficult because the aliens are disguised as humans and Vincent doesn't always know who he can trust. I'd wanted to see this show for a while, and I enjoyed the first season a lot, but I'm not going to talk any more about it right now. After we watch the second season, then I'm going to review the series as a whole on its own, so I'm super excited about that, and you can look forward to that review in, I guess, 2 to 3 weeks. Alright, I think that's everything. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on anything that I mentioned in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. I have a lot planned for this month, so I hope you'll stick around, and as always, thanks for watching.